Morning. I want to apologize for my voice. I didn't have one this morning when I woke up, but I almost was gonna, call Jurgen and have him do this, but here I am. So sorry, Jurgen.
Thank you.
True story, actually. I woke up and I went,
No, how could this happen?
yeah. But here I am. So yeah, you get what you get. I wanted to talk about last week because a lot of us weren't here last week, and I noticed that if I went, but this is part 2, everybody would go, of what? And so last week when I was here, I was talking about a couple breakthroughs, and I figured that that'd be a good thing to do toward this part of the summer when people are going on trips and everything like that. Not everybody's really thinking about, doing a hardcore spiritual study through the Bible, like regimented, and you kind of want to go do some more topical things. At least I do. And so last week I talked about waiting, and what I mean by waiting is not necessarily just sitting in a waiting room and having that experience, or being in the queue on the phone or something. I was actually talking about waiting as in waiting for God to do something, or waiting for something to happen in your spiritual life, which is a location that, as we studied that, we kind of learned that that's basically the state that we always should be in, because that means that God is growing us. So I believe that's on YouTube if you want to go and, is it? If you want to go and take a look at it and study through that. Yep. This week is breakthrough number 2. Breakthrough number 2 for me in the past year has been doing something that is weird for Americans. Let me explain. I love greeting cards. I'm kind of alone now because greeting cards have kind of gone out of fashion. I understand that. But I love, the experience I love is actually looking through the greeting cards, which is an experience that nobody else actually likes doing. But if I'm supposed to pick out a greeting card, I actually walk up, usually it's I found that Fred Meyer has a fabulous selection of greeting cards. Safeway always lets me down for some reason. I just you go and you're like, but I wanted more to look at. The ones that I settle on are the not outrageously funny, but like the tongue-in-cheek, very dry, funny cards. Those are the ones that I usually settle on. And that's not very popular now. It's the flamboyant, out there funny is really in right now. And so it makes it kind of hard to find a card that I actually really resonate with, which means that Fred Meyer's like 3 aisles of cards is what I love. But there's one section that I've personally never gone to, and recently I did go there just to see what was there, just because I was, doing research for this. And it was the forgiveness section. Like, what I mean is the I'm sorry and that kind of thing section. Now, there's a whole, for example, birthday cards. At Fred Meyer, there's a whole, about 2.5 aisles are actually dedicated to birthday cards. You got your really funny ones, you got your outrageously funny ones, your dry humor ones, your ones for 99 cents. Hey, you want to save trees and buy a recycled card? Now there's a whole aisle for that does like the same thing as the other ones. There's ones by like certain card artists, which could just shorten their name to cardists. Trademark. Sorry. I wasn't trying to be funny, but And there's sports memorabilia ones, and now there's even you might have seen these ones that are supposed to look like comic books. That's really in right now, apparently. There's the ones that pop out when you open them. There's those annoying ones that one family member always gets you, that when you open it, it plays music. Oh man, those are so horrible. Anyway, unless there's various ones people have given me, and I'm like, that's funny. But for the most part, the repetitiveness is a problem, and the fact that they actually turn on at night when I'm sleeping sometimes is also a problem. So there's just so many birthday cards. Walk past all those, if you get a second at Fred Meyer sometime. Walk to the forgiveness section, or the I'm sorry section. You will find about probably 20 cards. 20. Which you're thinking right now is a lot of cards, but with the birthday section, that's probably a good amount, like 120 to 200 cards. And when you get to that 20 card section and you start looking through them, most of them are blank. Most of them. In fact, most of them just have like a heart, I'm sorry, or, my favorite, a sad animal of some sort, usually. Yeah, if you don't believe me, go find it yourself. There's sad zebras and sad llamas and sad puppies and just something that looks cute enough to where the person that you've wronged goes, yeah, you're a jerk, but I guess it's kind of funny, and kind of looks through that way. It's a very small section. And in fact, there's so many things I've decided that we can be sorry for that they have to leave it blank, because what are you going to do? There's an umbrella of things that people are apologizing for. Have you ever gotten an apology card? I have never gotten an apology card. And it kind of made me wonder, what's the situation with apologies here? I mean, do we not do it? And what I've decided is, actually, this might be the decade, if any, or maybe even like the 50 years, if any, where Christians can talk to people that are not Christians about forgiveness, because it actually is a little bit more prevalent now than ever. Why? Debt. Tons and tons of debt. Student loan debt. Man, every time I pay my Fed loan, I do not scroll down. You know why? Right below where you pay that amount, you see the entire principal amount. Don't scroll down. Learned a long time ago. You want to buy a car. You're going to have to finance that car. You want to buy a house. You're going to have to finance that house. Dave Ramsey has become kind of antiquated in his philosophy of buying things with cash nowadays, right? Everything is financeable, and we do it all the time. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think that actually creates an opportunity for us to understand how crazy forgiveness is. Because it is wild and crazy and out there and reckless to forgive somebody. It's also wild and crazy and dangerously reckless for God to forgive us. I'll tell you about that too a little bit. So this has been a cool journey, and wanting to camp on kind of the debt situation, being someone I'm a teacher, I'm in a lot of student loan debt, let me tell you. Understanding it through that lens, through the lens of debt, has kind of made me understand how crazy the forgiveness is of this amazing God that we serve. So the first place I'm going is actually Ezekiel. And I'm going to Ezekiel, I'll just have to go there. I'm going to Ezekiel 36, 26 through 28. Now, to understand forgiveness, we got to understand that we're dealing with two things. We have a superficial, just as our natural state, we have a superficial relationship with God unless we work on it. Let me explain. Superficial religion requires things of you. It's finite. So if you ever walk into, to a certain extent, a Catholic church as well. If you ever, thought about, if you were a Catholic, what they might have to do for forgiveness. I looked it up. It's a lot of doing things to gain the forgiveness of God. And when questioned about this, Pope John Paul actually said, yes, but these things are not really to get God to forgive you. These things are really for you to understand forgiveness a little bit better. So he kind of tried to get around it a little bit. Basically, everyone previously, though, kind of said, yeah, you have to do all these things to be forgiven. The rosary beads, that kind of thing. If you haven't been to a Catholic Mass, the Hail Marys is what I'm talking about. So religion means you have to do a bunch of things to accomplish something. You have to do a lot of stuff for God to forgive you, or for a religious culture to forgive you. It's a set grouping of things that need to be done. And this is something that we love, right? When the Israelites got the law of Moses, for example, they were told that on one day a week, you must rest. Okay, well then the question became, what is rest? And all of a sudden, a lot of questions began to be posed to religious leaders, like, hey, when do we rest? What day is it? Does it have to be a certain day? Do we have to do something? Can I eat? Can I cook? Can I wear clothes? Hopefully. Can I transport clothes? Can I transport people? Can I transport in general? And so then the religious leaders finally had to sit down and go, okay, here's the deal. You can go a certain approximate amount of feet from each meal that you have, from your meals, assuming that a proper Jewish person would prepare their food the night before, right? You've heard this, and actually put it at their house. So what they were saying is eat at your house as long as you've already prepared your food, and then on the Sabbath you can, walk a little bit if you need to. If you want to go say hi to Frank across the road, right? What people started doing then is going like, oh, from my food. Okay. And organized Sunday gatherings. That way, you could actually travel a long distance because you could have food at your house. You could then have food at Frank's house. You could then have food at Jerry's house down the road. You could then have food at Mike's house. Pretty soon, you can walk anywhere you want throughout the village. People did this. Yes. We love rules because we love to kind of go around them, find the loophole, what do we need to do? And eventually when Jesus gets here, basically the Jewish religion had become this big old set of rules because the religious leaders were trying to keep everybody in check. We love to hate on the religious leaders, but honestly, they were really just trying to enforce the laws of Moses, and everybody was kind of going, yeah, but what about this? And pretty soon, if you keep doing that, you have a document that resembles our own Constitution and Bill of Rights. So it became a little bit convoluted, but we love that. I'll go to Ezekiel 36, 26 through 28. Now, God does not really view that relationship to us, this relationship that is based on forgiveness, as one that actually needs us to do anything. But let me show you. Then starting at verse 26, I will give you a new heart. This is, of course, talking to the Israelites. I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. And I will put my spirit in you and move you to follow my decrees and be careful to keep my laws. Now, notice that the keeping the laws thing happened on the end. It wasn't, if you keep my laws, I will sprinkle clean water, and it didn't start with that. It was a promise that God was making to his people. It was, I will do this for you, and because of the amazing love and forgiveness that I have, and because of the love that I'm showing you, you will be able to live with a heart of flesh instead of a heart of stone. A heart of stone doesn't move. A stone is heavy. A heavy heart is what he's talking about. A heart that does not accept or understand forgiveness. He's talking about a heart of flesh that actually is able to function, right? A heart of stone wouldn't work for you in your body. It can't function. Heart's really, if you haven't had your heart examined, your heart is not stone. It's actually flesh. Your heart needs to work to do things. In verse 28, he says, Then you will live in the land I gave your ancestors. You will be my people, and I will be your God. I will save you from all your uncleanness. I will call for the grain and make it plentiful, and will not bring famine among you. I will increase the fruit of the trees and the crops of the fields, so that you will no longer suffer disgrace among the nations because of famine. Then you will remember your evil ways and wicked deeds, and you will loathe yourselves for your sins and detestable practices. I camped on that last part all week. Let me tell you why. It says in verse 31, Then you will remember your evil ways and wicked deeds, and you will loathe yourselves for your sins and detestable practices. When you are able to understand forgiveness in the godly sense, that's what will happen. You will look back on things you have done, and you will go, what on earth? You will also, then things will begin to change because of that. It's not just like, if you do these things, then God will love you, because basically that's what it all boils down to. Turn it upside down is what God is saying. Because of the amazing love and forgiveness that I'm going to show you, now when you go back and you start to do those things that you did before my love, you are going to feel ashamed. You are going to be convicted in your heart. It's going to matter all of a sudden. And that's what he's talking about. I'm reading a book by David Platt, and it's called A Call to Live, A Call to Die. And it's a very severe sounding book. It came after the first book that he wrote, which is called Radical. And just to give you some background, and I think I already talked about David Platt before, he was actually at a mega church in Georgia for a long time. And this mega church in Georgia was doing a lot of great things. But basically it was kind of a mirror of what Paul talks about from time to time with the churches that he works with. He basically told his church, you have forgotten your first love. You have forgotten why you are here in the first place. His church wanted to put in some new worship equipment. No harm, no foul, right? New sound system went in. All of a sudden, the church was looking around at other churches in the area and said, yeah, our sound system now kind of matches the churches in the area. Careful. And then they said, now to match our sound system, you know what we need? A really sweet sanctuary area. We're going to call it, and I don't know what they called it. They called it some new thing. And that's fine, whatever, okay. They built an entire new worship center. Okay. They then decided that the rest of the church needed to be renovated again and again and again. And finally, they had a brand new building. But this wasn't enough for this church. This church also planned on having new sound systems put in various rooms of the church so people could hear messages and that kind of thing. And all of a sudden, they needed a podcast. And they needed this app that you put on your phone for them and that kind of stuff. And pretty soon, it got to the point where Platt was looking at their overseas missions and their local missions. They were not sending anyone to other countries, but they also weren't helping the community at home at all. They were giving to various organizations, but they weren't sending anybody. They weren't, practicing anything. They weren't having VBSs, and they weren't alive, is what he said. And he actually convicted them. He came to them one Sunday and he said, I have a series for you called Radical, and you can still watch the series. It's on YouTube. And he actually, in the series Radical, he goes on to explain about a church that does not have any of these things and only seeks and wants God and only seeks after Jesus. And he actually stripped down all of it to its bare wood and began to just talk to his people in a real God-fearing way. And the people of his church pulled back and said, whoa, you can't do this. We need all of these, churchy things. We need all of these new things in our church. You don't understand, we're not done yet. Our church needs to be bigger and more fantastic than every church in the area. And that's when David Platt said, then I resign as your pastor. And he said it was very sad for him. In the book, he goes on to say that it actually, he almost didn't go back into ministry, but then he decided to go and see if he could start another church, and he's been very successful since. He's now the leader on several church planting organizations. But in his second book, A Call to Live, A Call to Die, he actually talks about this paradox of us needing to do things to please God. And he says that even if you don't realize it, you're actually doing this as it is, and pretty much day to day. But he kind of said, stripping it back to its bare wood again, I'm going to go to some other countries and I'm going to do some research on various different religions to show you what they do and how crazy it sounds, and then I'm going to compare it to what we do. So we went to the Ganges River in India. And the Ganges River in India is sacred. It's known as a river that actually absolves the sins of Hindus. In fact, if you want to bury someone and make sure they go to the afterlife, you take their body and you put it into the Ganges River and it floats to the ocean, I guess. They don't care. They just kind of put the body in the river and then, now you're forgiven and you will go to heaven. Hindus. I'm not really sure where that is. The next thing that they do is that they love to sprinkle this water on themselves for the cleanliness of it, even though, dumping bodies in it, that's one thing, and then cleanliness, it doesn't really make sense. But they also want to, they believe it heals you, they believe it provides mystical powers. If you're going to become someone that's higher up in Hinduism, you actually have to go wash yourself in the Ganges River over and over and over again a bunch of times as you're doing all these rituals to become higher and more like-minded with, whoever you're supposed to be. Anyway, so that's the Hindus. He then went to some Zen Buddhists in the same country, and these Zen Buddhists actually practice the same thing in a different way. He went to these Zen Buddhists, and they actually have various temples erected. And he said this is actually the same as when he went to Tibet and actually looked at some Tibetan monasteries. And big buildings, there's a building for this kind of teaching, there's a building for learning about that, there's a building for learning about this. And basically, he said it's basically all about the same thing. You're learning about how to meditate to become a higher mind and to become truly at peace. And so he went to one of these Buddhists as he'd been walking amongst them for a little while, and they actually really liked the guy because he's easy to talk to. And he went to one of these Buddhists that was trying to attain what they know as nirvana, which is the highest form of peace and enlightenment that you can possibly be. However, there's not many people that get there, and those that are there kind of tell you some various convoluted things on how you get there, including Buddha himself. So we went to this one monk who's trying to get there. And he asked the monk a couple questions, and he asked the monk, first of all, how do you know if you truly have reached nirvana? The monk looked at him, kind of puzzled, and says, I don't know. That's the point. Come on, man. And so he kept asking the monk questions. The next question was, all right, well, what do you need to do next? And the monk detailed this whole day of fasting and praying and bowing before these various statues of various deities, and then going and doing these rigorous activities, physical activities and that kind of stuff to train your body and to shut your mind out of the equation and everything. And then you have to bring your mind back and open up your mind during all these meditation rituals and that kind of stuff. He was very good. He was able to detail the exact portions of his day that were dedicated to everything. And David Platt asked him, that's not what I was asking. I was asking, what do you have to do next? Like, what stage are you? Do you know how close you are to reaching nirvana? The monk said, no, I have no idea. He says, do you know anyone that's actually reached nirvana? He says, no, I've never actually met anyone that's reached nirvana. Okay. He then asked him, do you think that Buddha himself reached nirvana? The monk's response was actually the most interesting, I think, in the entire book. The monk actually said, the reason we're trying to reach nirvana is we don't know if Buddha himself got there. David Platt left a little bit mystified, but then began to think about us. Have you at any time ever thought that one sin trumped another sin? Even if you know it's wrong, have you ever thought that? Like, for example, in the book by C.S. Lewis, The Great Divorce, I've talked about that before, a murderer and the person that murdered him both ended up in the same place, but by different avenues. They're kind of waiting on the end of days for a real heaven and a real hell to be kind of separated and people to go where they need to go. And the murderer was the one that accepted Christ. And so he went to heaven. And the guy that he murdered was basically sent to Hades to await eternal destruction. And they come together, and the guy that he killed went, What's wrong with this? Why are you here? That doesn't make any sense. You did something so heinous that I don't understand how you got where you got. And the guy actually answers, I don't either. It doesn't make any sense to me either. All I did was committed my life to Christ, and he took it all. The other guy had no idea what he was talking about. He said, how could he have possibly taken it all? It weighs more than everything else. It's not like you stole something. You took someone's life. Again, the murderer really had no explanation. He said, I have no explanation at all. All you need to do is this. This is what I'm telling you. It's crazy. Just follow Christ and this will happen. And the guy that he murdered could not get past what he did. He could not, I don't know if he couldn't forgive him, but he couldn't get past that. That's what forgiveness meant. It's crazy. Forgiveness, in a sense, is when someone owes you something, for example. It's as if the federal government came to me and said, Geoff, you owe us $80,000, let's say. We're taking it. It's done. See you later. Have a great day. See, in our modern day interpretation, that's crazy talk. That's crazy. How could that possibly happen? And I think that's our avenue of reaching people and understanding what Jesus actually did. In Matthew 5, 23 through 25, we kind of get the second half, though. So if you go to Matthew 5, when I was looking at all this stuff and when I was studying this, I kind of had a problem with this text because it kind of rewrites everything I know about myself as a Christian. Sometimes when I go to church, I'm exceedingly happy to be there, exceedingly happy to be here. Sometimes when I come to church, I've got the week on me. I have a whole list of things that have been done to me and that need to be done throughout the week. Sometimes that's just the way it goes. Sometimes when I come to church, I'm exceedingly tired from something I stayed up thinking about, or something I stayed up reading, or something like a conflict I had with somebody. And in Matthew 5, 23, we actually learned that that's not biblical at all. This really convicted me this week. This is what forgiveness is. Therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar, now let me pause. What is a gift? Of course, we're Americans, we love rules, and there's nothing wrong with that. So what's a gift? A gift is anything you bring before God. You are a gift. The fact that you are in church praising God, a gift to God could be worship. A gift to God could be monetary. If it's your time of the month to tithe, or if you have a little bit of extra and you're like, I want to bless the church with this. Any kind of gift to God. Therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar, and remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled to them, then come and offer your gift. I'll read that again. Therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar, and remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First, go and be reconciled to them. Then come and offer your gift. Do it now. Fix it quickly. Now, most of the things that I actually need to be forgiven of, I need to be forgiven from God before I actually start offering my praise and worship to Him. So what I've actually started doing is, especially before I give a monetary gift to God, or especially before I come to worship, starting in prayer. I love that this church starts in prayer, because starting in prayer and getting yourself right with God is a first step before you do anything. But let's talk about with people. There have been some people in my life, and there have been some times when I need to be forgiven for things too. Forgiveness person to person, you might have been able to grasp the abstract reality of, a God that would forgive absolutely everything no matter what. But let's say it's someone that has done something to you, but not just once. There's someone that's a repeat offender, right? They just keep doing the same thing. You know the person just came to your mind right away. They're just always doing that thing. And you keep going, well, I forgive you. And it's more like, I'm just not going to think about it anymore, is our forgiveness, right? At least it's mine. That's kind of me just speaking to myself. Usually forgiveness, if I go, I forgive you, it's, I just don't want to talk about it anymore. That's what I'm thinking, right? I don't want to bring it up anymore, sure, whatever. I forgive you because it's the right thing to do. I haven't forgiven you at all in here. My heart is still stone, it's not flesh. I haven't forgiven you at all. And when I come to church, now, I'm not thinking about that, but this would suggest that I need to search myself and actually go to that person and say to them, we're good, we're fine. See, forgiveness isn't, I forgive you, but you need to, no. Forgiveness is, this debt is so big. This debt needs to be acknowledged because it is so big that it is separating us. Notice the correlation between us and God. This is so big that it's separating us. We can't be in the same room right now. But you know what? We're good. You're fine with me. It's over. That means not only am I never going to talk about it again, we're not going to refer to this again when we negotiate about things. I'm not going to think about it anymore. It's covered, it's done. Why? Because Jesus did that for us. Who are we to keep some petty thing from somebody else when Jesus has forgiven billions of people throughout history of billions of horrible things? That is the kind of forgiveness that is expected of us. Do we forgive as Jesus did? I was kind of worried about that with myself this week. True forgiveness is recognizing the debt and declaring it unpayable, both unpayable and completely resolved. It's as if Mazda came to me and said, Geoff, I understand you still need to make a whole bunch of payments to us for your car. It's okay. You're fine. The car is yours. I think, and I might be wrong, but I think that in our modern day and age, with the amount of financing and with the amount of debt everybody has, this might be the day and age when we as Christians can forgive as Jesus did and have it mean something huge. Do you know how many debts we not only keep financially, but that we keep toward each other? So many. In fact, during the school year, I can't even set foot in my building without someone coming up and saying, cheer about such and what they did. You know the kind of thing. And gossiping is the same way. It's just talking about debts. It's just talking about the various debts that people owe you. It needs to stop. And it can stop with us. Now, something that you might do to practice this with yourself is, first of all, every Sunday, to do what I did, to kind of treat Sunday as that day when I'm good with God, I'm good with everybody else. Try it for one Sunday. That's what I did one time. Very uncomfortable. If that means you have to call up someone or text someone or do something, meet them face to face and say, hey, I realized that what I said really offended you. Or, the harder part, what you did was terrible and just detestable toward me. But you know what? It's done. It's done. I'm not going to think about it anymore. I forgive you because that's what Jesus did for me. Try that one Sunday. Before you come to church, examine all the things in your life that could be in that realm of a Matthew 23 situation. Like you're going to offer and you're going to make an offering, but all this stuff, right? Go down the list, forgive every single person. Call them up, text them, meet them, get it all together before Sunday. See what that does for your life. I want to direct you to one more place in Matthew before we close. It's Matthew 18. And Matthew 18 is one of my favorite places just because, honestly, it's one that I like to make a joke of because it's the first episode of Nick at Night. Because, Nicodemus comes to Jesus and it's at night. Sorry, Nick at Night. Anyway, he comes to Jesus and he says, you know what, I've had it with my superficial religion and I want to take on your likeness. What do I need to do? So here it is, without further ado. Oops. Nope, I'm in the wrong place, I believe. Never mind, I skipped right over Nicodemus. I'm sorry, that's not what I'm talking about right now. Matthew 18 is horrible. Matthew 18 is when Peter comes to Jesus. So Peter came to Jesus and said, Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? Up to 7 times? Because not only was that the law, if you look back, but 7 times is also kind of crazy. Jesus answered, I tell you, not 7 times, but 77 times. Therefore, the kingdom of heaven is like this. It's like a king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. As he began the settlement, a man who owed him 10,000 bags of gold was brought to him. Since he was not able to pay, the master ordered that he and his wife and his children, and that all he had, be sold to pay the debt. Some translation it says be sold into slavery to pay the debt. At this, the servant fell on his knees before him and said, Be patient with me, he begged, and I will pay back everything. The servant's master took pity on him, canceled the debt, and let him go. But when the servant went out, he found one of his fellow servants, who owed him 100 silver coins. He grabbed him and began to choke him. Pay back what you owe me, he demands. His fellow servant fell to his knees and begged him, Be patient with me, and I will pay it all back, but he refused. Instead, he went off and had the man thrown into prison until he could pay the debt. When the other servants saw what was happening, they were outraged and went and told their master everything that happened. Then the master called the servant in. You wicked servant, he said, I canceled all that debt of yours because you begged me to. Shouldn't you have been merciful on your fellow servant just as I had on you? In his anger, the master handed him over to the jailers to be tortured until he should pay back what he owed. And Jesus says this is how my heavenly Father will treat each of you unless you forgive your brother or sister from your heart. That's harsh, isn't it? Harsh, but easy. Let me explain. If you have a heart of flesh, if Jesus has truly penetrated your life, and if every day you're making an example to walk with him and to live with him, then this begins to be something that Jesus digs the well deeper. Your well might not be right now deep enough to forgive that thing that came to your mind during this service, because I know something did. But get there. See if you can get there. See if Jesus can wear you down throughout the week. See if he can get your understanding close to the forgiveness that needs to happen. There's something for me right now, I won't tell you what it is, but there's something for me right now that I have not forgiven from somebody, and that I really need to take care of. I'm not there yet. Jesus is still working on my heart. I know I need to be there. I know it's terrible, and I need to get there and forgive this person. I'm right now telling you, though, sometimes it is incredibly difficult. But this parable kind of tells you that Jesus kind of looks and goes, you know what? You know how many things I have forgiven throughout the years? If you understand what forgiveness means, what true forgiveness means, it means it's over and done and I've taken care of it myself. Why don't you do that with each other? Not only because it will help you personally, but because it kind of breaks apart disunity. Imagine a church where no one talked about each other at all, except if it was a positive way. Imagine a church like that. I've never been to one. Seriously, I've never been to one because we're all human. But I've been to churches too that have kind of quarreled and feuded and almost fought and been separated and been torn apart just because someone could not look past that one thing that other person did, and it mounted. And when you come to them and you go like, hey, let me understand. Well, I don't know, it was like 40 years ago, I don't know. It's convoluted depending on who you talk to. That's kind of, an outsider's perspective of that is kind of how Jesus, I bet, looks at that. He goes, oh my goodness, just get rid of that. Do you understand how much that's detracting from your life and your spiritual walk? Get rid of that. So this week, I am going to be looking forward to actually helping Jesus walk with me throughout this. But forgiving like the servant's master.